Van Dyke's joke was something about like, so why didn't the guy bring his fingers with him when he blew him off on 4th of July? She said, because he was having trouble picking them up.
You're listening to the Homeboys podcast, recorded in our Indiana office and with combined 40 years of experience. Here's your hosts, Clint and Scott.
There ain't nothing like a homeboys party because a homeboys party don't stop. That is right. We're the homeboys. This is the Homeboys podcast. We're excited to be here with you today. We've been away from one another for a couple of weeks here. I missed you, man.
Yeah.
You don't call or write or text or email.
We talk.
Actually, you do.
Yeah, I was going to say we probably talked just about every single day that we were apart.
Well, I was on vacation. You were down visiting your dad.
I was.
Dad's health looking good. That's great.
Yep.
You know, his dad had a few little scares, so continue the prayers coming in.
Yeah, it's appreciated. But yeah, it was a good trip. We got in to see some really good people, some really quality people there at University of Florida Medical Center, and they're going to put him in a hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah.
I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
You know, I like to...
Michael Jackson used to be in one all
That's
the time.
what I told my dad.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't know what it was, and so I was explaining to him, like, you know, when he's a diver, you know, that's how I learned to scuba dive was... This is highly illegal, but I used to go underwater with him with his spare air. So you have two, and I'd just dive with him without my own tank. That's how I learned.
Of course you would. Yeah.
But I told him it's the thing that when you screw up when you're diving, it's that tank they put you in to keep your blood from boiling.
Yeah.
But so he understood it then. And then I started thinking of all the people. Michael Jackson. There was a couple other like.
I remember Terrell Owens was the NFL player. Used to do it a lot.
And then Lance
Armstrong.
Yeah. But anyway.
But you also had an interesting experience at the airport. I think it's important. Yeah. I think it's awesome. Yeah. I want to comment on it, but you and I both have a fascination for Rocky, the Rocky, movies, and particularly Sylvester Stallone in general. We're both big fans, and I turned you on to a website a couple years ago called SlyStalloneShop.com, and it's like, everything Rocky and Rambo and everything cool.
It's literally his store.
Correct.
Where he sells things.
But you got a really awesome John Rambo backpack.
I do.
But, go ahead and tell the story of, like, what else happened with you and your John Rambo backpack.
Oh, God. So about 3 years ago, I ordered this John Rambo backpack because I'm addicted to anything on Sly Stallone's store.
I just think it's amazing.
And it's what I carry around. It's a military bag that says John Rambo on it.
Love it.
And when I first got it, it was like 3 years ago, I went and I happened to be shooting. I took it shooting, and I must have emptied one of my gun's clips into this little tiny pocket in there and then just forgot about it. I've flown probably 15, 16 times since then with that backpack.
Oh, it's with your John Rambo backpack.
With my John Rambo backpack, of course. But this time, there's a little alarm that went off when I went through, when they sent my bag through, and they stopped the gates and all that stuff. So I found out the hard way what happens when you leave ammunition in your bag that you're sending through TSA.
But
they were very nice.
They're finding ammunition in a John Rambo backpack, and probably
that's what saved me.
The TSA people. I mean, did they know?
Oh, she said it.
She got.
I was telling Joe earlier. I said she totally got it. She goes, well, if there was a bag that I was going to find bullets in, it's John Rambo's.
But I picture there could be like some young kid. They have no idea what Rambo is.
They would say, Mr. Rambo.
Yeah, Mr. Rambo.
That's kind of what I hope for when I wear it, to be honest.
Oh, you told me the story on the phone.
No, I texted you. I said, I found out the hard way what happens when you bring bullets on your plane.
I've thought about it, and just the picture of the Rambo backpack, the ammunition, security.
They were fully entertained. I was the one who was upset and like worried and apologetic, and they were like, "No, it's cool, John."
I picture like in First Blood, like you end up running, and then they catch you, and they're hosing you down with the fire hose and running through the woods.
That first Rambo is dirty.
Oh man,
it's hardcore.
I love it. It's something else. Well, anyhow, it's good to be back with you. I was in Gatlinburg for a week with the family. It was great. Pretty much did everything that Gatlinburg, what Gatlinburg's known for, but it was great. But it is good to be back because when you travel with 2- and 4-year-old girls, you almost need a vacation from the vacation, and that place is my office and this podcast.
Right.
Today, we probably going to get a little fired up again. We're going to talk about some real estate scams that we have seen here in Indianapolis, 3 in particular. But I think it's important to talk about these scams because they're always going to be out there and they're always going to be happening, no matter where you're at.
These are 3 fairly common type of scams, and these are 3 real-world examples that we want to share with you guys because it's absolutely disgusting what we see happen out there. And these are 3 fairly common types that you should be on the watch for and the lookout for.
And it's amazing how much these 3 scams that we're about to talk about have entered into our work lives.
For sure.
And how we have to put up with the fallout from the scams, as well. And it's a hassle for us. We're a very ethical, moral company that we've done everything right for many years, but then, we have to deal with the fallout from these. So before I get too far ahead, let's just dive in.
Okay.
The first one we're going to talk about is basically goes along with experience and property management. So we had a guy that was referring us property management customers. Went out to breakfast with him a few times and really tried to befriend us. And then we got a call that some of our customers were leaving us and going to his property management company, which was his name. So I don't want to say it, but this guy doesn't know anything about property management whatsoever.
My introduction to him was I had to go to a city council meeting on his behalf. He was referring us enough clients that we owed him at least the favor of helping him with weird situations. Mm-hmm. And so I met him by going to a city council meeting basically and handling everything for him there. And he knew less than nothing about real estate, and that was
nothing.
Was like 2 weeks before this all started, where he started opening his own property management firm, and he had all the right buzzwords out there to make himself sound like he knew what he was doing, but he had zero experience and had zero business going into the business of property management, and he lacked ethics on top of all of that. Talk about dangerous.
So he was going to places like Bigger Pockets and some of these real estate places, which I think is very important to note. Just because it's on a very popular real estate forum doesn't mean that it's the gospel or that's what you should do. But he was posting, Well,
let me touch on that real quick, though, too. On Bigger Pockets, it's a very useful website for a lot of folks in our business. You and I don't go on there. It's not our cup of tea. But there's experts on there. But mixed in with those who post as much or more than the true experts are some clowns, and we've dealt with 2 or 3 of them. I can think come to mind.
I hate the site.
Yeah, love
the podcast. I listen to the Bigger Pockets podcast. Hate the site. The site's to me is more ass clownery than it is legit. It's people that's trying to get into real estate imposing like they really know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I would say it's almost a 50-50 coin flip when an expert on there tells you something that they are a clown and have no clue what they're doing or are a straight-up scam artist. And so trying to figure out who is who on there is an absolute mess for newbies.
And I mean no disrespect to the founders of that. And, like I said, I listen to their podcast. I think it's
an
great.
open forum.
I think they're smart. But it's an open forum
where
not their fault. Correct. You really got to watch what goes on there, because this particular guy, would go on there, post all this stuff. And a few times he actually posted negative stuff about us. And, was pulling customers with, like you said, buzzwords. And then also the fee structure that he was charging people was supposed to be so much less and all this. And I've said it before. I mean, if there's a property manager out there advertising for a significantly less fee structure, something's up. We're working on the tiniest of margins
10% is the industry standard in these middle market, our tier. If it's vacation rental, it can be a lot higher. If it's in a large metropolitan area, the fee structure can be a little lower percentage. However, 10%, in order for us to survive, 10% is what we have to charge our clients. Right. We're not driving Bentleys. You didn't pull up in your Rolls Royce. No. You pulled up in a 1996 Tahoe.
That is correct.
And we do a good job, but 10% is the industry.
Bumping ass sound system, though.
Yeah,
that's right. But anyhow, so he was picking customers off like this, and we didn't have a significant amount that left our management, but we enough for us to know what was going on, and we just kind of left it at that. And then you started hearing rumblings of customers weren't getting paid, and then just to make a long story short, he ran off with all of their customers' damage deposits and a month's worth of rent in most cases, because he had no idea what he was doing.
Right.
The moral of the story is when someone literally, has a few minutes of property management experience, probably not the place to take your hundreds of thousands of dollars of investments,
right,
for this guy to manage. And that's really the thing. Like, think about how important the property management is. I mean, you're talking, if you've got a portfolio, we have one particular client had 10 homes. You've got over $1 million, that you're given to someone to manage, and you're going to send it to someone that has a minute of property management experience. So anyhow, we got a lot of those customers back. They ended up coming back to us after they became victims of this guy. It was interesting. We got some of these customers back, and then I found out that once we got the leases back from these people, he ripped our lease off.
Right.
Whenever we had sent him leases before, he robbed our lease, and our lease isn't a one-page lease. It's an 8-page lease with 8 addendums to it that he took word for word from us. I told somebody, like, well, you're going to sue the guy? I'm like, well, what am I going to sue him for? A guy has nothing. Right. These people that are victims have nothing. We have a business that we have everything to lose because we've built a strong, valuable business.
Right.
But anyhow, so I don't know what's going on with the charges against this guy,
right,
whatnot. But now we've got some of the customers that we've had one customer in particular come back and want us to hold the damage deposits owner held because of this. Yeah. And like, well, we can't. I hate it that you're victims of this, but we can't switch our system up, and our leases are with the tenants, also.
Sure. We have a fiduciary duty to the owners, but we also have a duty to the tenants. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to let one client put us in a position where they run off with the deposit and owe it back to the tenants. And
right.
we have a lease with that
mm-hmm.
tenant. We would have to come out with that money out of our pocket. We're not going to do that.
Right.
We do things right. If you work with a large company like ours that's been in business for 20 plus years, you're going to have systems in place that should work. Now you want to verify those, but to think that any one person should come in and just change that just because they've been ripped off, it's almost backwards. Why didn't they do this with the clown that they went with instead? Then they come back to the actual real company.
Well, I mean, yeah, because we've been doing this for a combined 40 years. Right. Let's make the fact that someone decided to go into to business with an absolute idiot that had zero experience. Let's make it the problem of the company that's been here for 40 years. Doesn't make any sense.
So look into when mm-hmm. who you're working with. Make sure, we always talk about this. I know people got to start somewhere, so I don't want to bash everybody as they start out. But this is a very difficult business, and there are some great, great companies in every market that you can go with. Why get cute? Why try to be greedy and pay a little less? You're talking about a chance to save, $50 a month, and you're putting $1 million worth of properties at risk? It's ridiculous.
That's an excellent point.
It's ridiculous.
Let's say that again.
Yeah. It's so... If
save $50 a month.
Correct.
When you're putting millions of dollars at risk with somebody. I mean, and that's the reality of it.
A client who has 10 houses has about $1 million worth of properties,
mm-hmm.
Or average. And the average amount that they could save, at most, I should say, actually, not the average, would be about $50 a month if someone had a little smaller fee structure. Mm-hmm. And so you're putting all of your assets into the hands of a clown or an inexperienced person. This is a tough business. They're just going to be bumps in the road for them, even if they are ethical, which, I hate to say it, most of the time they're not. It's at least a coin flip. It's at least a coin flip.
I can't stand that guy.
I know.
Because I got to put up with the BS. I know. I had to deal with this for an hour last week, alone. It's just.
So we're a licensed brokerage, so we have to hold our damage deposits in escrow, in an actual escrow account, accounted for, and they have to all be there. And just because some other property management firm isn't licensed, or if they are licensed, doesn't obey the law, doesn't mean that these big companies, you should just automatically try to undermine what they're doing and try to insert your own way just because of that. Right. So, if you're going to work with a company that's got a good reputation and has been around for a long time and has systems in place, you don't have the power to change that with just a handful of properties. It's not worth it.
In most cases, the likelihood of you finding a legit property manager that lets you do owner-held deposits, they're not a legit property manager.
Zero.
So literally by saying that that's what you require, you're just opening yourself up to go into business with another clown.
Right. I heard someone say that not that long ago. Make sure you have owner-held deposits. I immediately was like, what are you talking about? What licensed property management firm would allow that? It's crazy.
I know.
It's crazy. And that was the advice someone was giving.
Everyone's smarter than the people that have been doing it for decades. It's just, but it's experience. We want to protect our customers. Right. And there are other PM companies in town that share the same sentiment, as us, and we know are legit. That it's not like
each other.
It's not like we're running the only legit company. We all know each other, and we know who's legit and who's not. It's just hire professionals.
Yeah,
hire professionals.
There you go.
Our number two scenario. That was our first scenario. Yep. Number two scenario, we're talking about a syndication that we saw go wrong. So maybe if. And you're much more intelligent when it comes to this because you work with some of our investment firms, and
I'm more informed.
Yeah, but talk about what a syndication is first, and then like what happened with this particular guy. Another guy that I'd like to kick his ass, by the way.
Yeah, which you knew from the day
I did, yeah.
But a syndication, to put in as simple of terms as possible, is basically pooling your money with other investors and going in on a project. Yep. That's the very simplest cut down version. And this is an example of that where a bunch of investors pooled their money together to invest in a failed apartment building. And this building was all the way vacant at that time, and the city had an order to empty the building because of gas leaks, I believe.
It was.
And then, anyone who knows anything about real estate is once you have an entire apartment complex that's vacant and not going forward with those repairs, it's going to go backwards really fast.
Good point. Real fast.
Really fast. Yep. And so this guy was out there selling what the apartment building used to be many years ago when it was nice as what he was going to bring it up to. And on paper, the numbers looked great. His ideas looked great. We knew from a very early stage for two reasons. I'm going to tell one, and then basically the other one is his gut, and he's going to talk to you about what he saw that made him immediately call this guy a scammer. But there was one piece of evidence for us that made it crystal clear from the very start. So he's doing a YouTube video walkthrough of this apartment building in the middle of Anderson, Indiana. And he's walking around the apartment complex. And then it cuts to him walking along a lakefront as if he's still in the apartment complex. And he says, and this is lakefront property. All you had to do was go to Google and see that it wasn't.
It is many miles away from any water.
Right.
It's and he's putting that out there.
Yeah, on video.
Right.
Insanity. So we met him when he was raising money.
Yeah, we were at an event in Bay Area. I think it was San Francisco area, suburb.
Somewhere out there.
And anyhow, a lot of the people that spoke, which he was a speaker at this conference, which also tells you, I mean, you got to be careful with who you listen to. But you know, he spoke, and then a bunch of us that had spoke went out to eat and grab a beer. You know, after we'd spoke or out there, more people drink wine than beer. You know, I'm like, you got any Busch Light?
Yeah.
You know, but
no, they're drinking kale wine.
Yeah, but anyhow, I'll make this short. Within the first 10 minutes of us sitting down at a table with him, he proceeded to tell us about this boat and.
Mistress, cheating on his wife.
And then the worst was within 10 minutes, he tells us that he's cheating on his wife with, some young girl. And, I don't condone that kind of behavior in any circumstance. Nonetheless, like, dude, I just met you. Why the hell are you telling me about you being a scumbag? I don't think it's cool that you're cheating on your wife.
Right.
In fact, I don't really want to be around you anymore.
Right.
Because you do think it's cool. I just said, like shortly after that, and I brought up the boat because I could tell that, like, it was people that make their own money don't talk the way that he did.
Right.
And the way he was talking about this boat and everything else, they don't talk that way. We're going to have someone on the show here, next week that he is going to come in here, with a fisherman's cap on, a half of a cigar in his mouth, and clothes that he's had for the last 10 years, that could buy out most rooms. He would never talk like that guy. But I could just tell he was just a scumbag from hello.
Yeah, but it was just. And you also called what he was going to be doing. You knew something was wrong with it, that in itself, the money that he was raising, which I didn't.
People that talk like that don't know how to manage money.
Yeah.
They don't. I mean, it's just, they don't know how to manage money.
For example.
So, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
For example, he bought golf clubs with the money. He bought.
And how do you know this?
Because we ended up having to get involved and save the.
A lot of it was posted on the indictment that I read online. Oh, that's
right. Yeah, it was in his indictment. Yeah, but
there was a restaurant. But there
was a restaurant and his yacht. Those were all. The yacht wasn't even his, and he used this money to buy another restaurant.
So explain the situation.
So we had to come involved and save the project because the guy had just burned through all the money he raised.
So all these investors, they
pulled their money.
They send their money in, and then he did a very few repairs to show the building going forward, and then he was just
out of money.
Just out.
And then it was excuses after excuses and delays with getting, the accounting done and showing. And so, it was really ugly. And we had to get involved and use some of our own money to help because some of these folks ended up being our clients of all things. And so we got involved.
Oh, it cost us 25 G's.
Yeah. We got involved. Well, we had hundreds of thousands of dollars out on the rehab. So we got involved and rehabbed the buildings and got them back to where they were starting to be stabilized finally. And then
and the reason why I said it cost us 25 G's was more in the labor from our employees that we were sending up
free
there.
Time.
Because really, I mean, the person that was at the top of this thing is a personal friend of ours, and we care about her. We care about the other people that were involved.
Right.
We wanted to help them.
Yeah. So one way to be safe with syndications is to make sure that there's a third party involved that has a reputation and a history of doing these, that's going to oversee it the right way. That's one way to help mitigate the risks with these. A lot of these syndication deals early on were it was the wild, wild west. People were raising money and, hoping the person did what they said they could do. And because real estate can be such a lucrative thing, it worked out on most of them. Since then, I think guardrails have been put in place with most of the people we know that would do a syndication. But you got to make sure guardrails are in place.
But you got two really important things with syndications. Like, you got money management. You got to have like the most disciplined people to manage the money, because I mean you got money coming in from 50, 75, 200 different people, and then on top of that, then you've got the operational management of either constructing new or rehabbing what is existing.
Right.
And you get, I mean, if like with this guy's particular case, I think he was out of Chicago, you take him from Chicago to Anderson, Indiana, he doesn't have any connections or anything down here. Like if you send, me and you to Boise, Idaho, and tell us that we've got to manage the operations, we're not the people.
Right.
It's
right.
It's you really got to be well connected, and if you don't have those two things, I mean, and those are huge things.
Yeah. There's people who can manage and do properties all over the country. Those people aren't raising money by syndication. They're not. They don't need your money.
Right.
The operations that are nationwide that can do this anywhere, they're not going to be raising money from investors like this. They're not.
Well, that's a fabulous point, because we could do syndications.
Oh yeah.
Because I feel like those two things I just mentioned that we're both that us and our company we have an in-house accountant. We're all excellent at doing that stuff, but we've never done one.
I don't like other people's money.
I hate it.
I hate other people's money. We both agree with that. It's just a recipe for a mess, and it changes people's behavior. We see it all the time at when we're competing against someone. We can point out in the room when we're trying to buy an asset who is using their own money and who is using other people's money by their behavior. Mm-hmm. That's a scary thought. And the behavior isn't because they're well behaved. It's because they don't give a shit about money. No. They're spending it because it's not theirs.
Correct.
They're making fees along the way, or however they're doing it. It's different.
Oh, fairy dust.
Yes, it's Fugazi.
Fugazi.
So, with syndications, you got to be extra, extra careful. It's nice if there's a third party involved that is helping maybe raise those funds and then has an accounting section that will oversee a lot of it. Sometimes it's nice if there's a third party property management, because that takes care of the accounting for some of the inflows of money. But still, man, there's a reason why syndicate investments, the people that are allowed according to the SEC to invest in them have to have, I forget the numbers, but they have to have like $1 million net worth and some other things. They have to be high earners. It's because they're risky, and people who make a lot of money and have a lot of money are thought by the SEC to have a higher risk tolerance and a higher aptitude for understanding complex deals.
Right.
I don't know that that's not necessarily true, but there's a lot of risk. There's a reason for those guardrails. So
thankfully,
just be careful.
Thankfully in this situation, the person that was in charge of the event that took place, that where a lot of this investors come from, is of extreme high moral fiber, and a great human being, and was able to work it out to where I don't know exactly if it was all recouped, but I know most of it was, if not all of it, to the.
I was behind the scenes with that, and you want to talk about somebody with really good moral fiber that went above and beyond, way beyond what any court would ever say she had to do. They had to do. She genuinely cares about her clients and genuinely hated the fact that this clown did this to them. She was as much a victim as anyone else.
No doubt.
And yet she stepped up, and that's kind of why we stepped up too, to be honest, is because we know she's got higher moral fiber, and we wanted to help her as she helped others. So, in the end, that is a saving grace. If you work with a really good group that is doing these syndications, there's a little bit more of a safety net there with them being involved. Yeah. But, there still is high risk.
For sure.
There's risk.
Well, moving on to our third scenario. Our third scenario, we've talked about it a few times on our show. Why don't you lead us into it? Why don't you tell us?
This one gets us both fired up.
I hate even talking about it. It makes me so mad.
Yeah, so this is just a classic kind of what we see in the industry all the time. It's somebody, just slinging ghetto properties for high prices because he shows high returns on the piece of paper. And then when, it's time for the music to play, he's gone. The properties either don't exist or are in disrepair and aren't worth what he sold them for. And it all collapses, and you're stuck with a property in the heart of the ghetto that's worth no money, that is not what you thought you bought, and it just all falls apart. And unfortunately, we had a lot of clients who were seduced by these pro formas showing, 15% returns.
That's exactly what happened.
And, the 99.999% of the fault lies with this unethical guy who pulled this off, and the unethical people on television who helped pump his plan.
So you got a national,
news network
personality.
Yep.
All right, and he partners. He basically calls him a real estate expert, and then finds affiliates in other markets, and then will send his clients to these other affiliates to find them investment homes in those respective areas. So the guy that he partners with here in Indianapolis, very apparent, and I don't know this, I don't know the guy personally, very unethical. But this national news guy, apparently, his name is, all over this as well.
He's on deeds. He wasn't just referring people. He was a part of it from the drop. I mean, there's a paperwork trail, and this is still being litigated out in courts, and there's criminal proceedings against some of the people involved. So I'm not going to speak on the exact details, but there's paperwork showing that he was just as involved as anybody, and everyone has their own side and their own arguments on it. But at the end of the day, if you're selling a property that you bought for $5,000 for $80,000 and you haven't touched it, and then you say, oh, all the money's gone, I was going to rehab it, but we're out of money now, and every single person involved was getting paid along the way, come on.
So these people thought that they had bought a rehabbed house.
Yeah.
It was not.
Or it was about to be rehabbed if it wasn't,
right.
That's another thing. Don't buy a house for $80,000 that they're going to rehab later for you. Mm-hmm. They're going to hold your money and rehab it as soon as you're done. No. Buy a house that's done, period. You don't close until it's done.
So they think that they've got a rehabbed house or soon to be rehabbed, and these people then were receiving rents. They were getting the rent money. And in some extreme cases, homes did not even exist. Like there was one extreme case where the house had burnt to the ground previous, like a month, 2 months, whatever it was, prior to closing. And then that person was still receiving rent money.
Right.
On it. So it was legitimately a Madoff type Ponzi scheme where they're taking new money and paying off old people and put, the rent money. I mean, it was just literally a house of cards.
It was, literally. And, the argument that will be made, to justify what happened on their end will be, well, it just got away from us. We were trying to do it this way. But, when you're flying around on private jets and you are literally buying, his criteria for purchasing houses was to go into the MLS and to pick the cheapest 10 houses that are in there without looking at them and buy them. But he wouldn't even buy them.
So just searching like $0 to
$5,000.
$5,000.
Right. That was the criteria. Mm-hmm. And he wouldn't even close on the purchase. He'd get them pending in his name, and then, or in this other person's who's selling this pump and dump on TV. Then they would call their clients and say, I've got you a house, here's the address, and they would do a double close. They wouldn't even ever purchase the house. They would just double close it where, they're paying $5,000 for it and the person's paying $80,000. So the person who's paying $80,000, $75,000 of that goes into these scam artists' pocket, and $5,000 goes to purchase that house. They weren't even using their own money to buy the houses.
Right.
They didn't own the houses they were selling. I mean, it's just unethical all across the board, every which way you cut this thing. And we see it, though. This isn't the first time this has happened that we've seen here just in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, even some good clients that we have, chase some of these returns. And as an example, they're behind the 8 ball then. We had a client who bought 3 properties through this. 2 of them didn't exist. They were both lots. Mm-hmm. And the other one was just this junk property. And that client then was awful to us.
Oh, he was a jerk.
Awful to us.
A jerk.
We
It takes a lot for me to say that, and we were doing everything we could to help him.
You know, this junk property that we bought that we would never manage normally because he got ripped off. We were trying to help. He would get our bids, and then he'd go find these like people off the street to do the rehab, or I don't even know what it was. But then we couldn't tenant it because the repairs were done so shoddy, and then he'd be mad at us, even though he cut us out of, you know, trying to help him. You know, he didn't want us making a single dollar on this too, as if we owe him anything. We were there trying to help him.
We were there to save him from this, and would have.
Right. So, like, as an example, you know, there was say $1,000 for all new flooring for this giant place. He would go find it for $990 and use them instead of us to make sure we didn't make any money along the way. You know, just ridiculous stuff.
Well, I mean, you know, that he was an extreme case, and we ended up just telling him that we didn't think we were a fit for him anymore. You know, and to take it somewhere else. But you know, these people, it was hard for us to help many of them. We had our phone ring a lot because they thought they were buying a rehabbed house,
right.
And then they couldn't accept the fact that now you have a house that you paid $100,000 for, or whatever it was, $100,000 for, and it needs $60,000 of rehab to get it right.
And once you're done with that $60,000 rehab, it's worth $50,000.
Correct.
You know, so it's you can't fix it up because it's not worth it. You can't sell it if you owe any debt. Although none of them had mortgages, luckily, because it would never appraise and be able to get a mortgage. But you know, you're in that spot of no return. Throw more money at it and lose it, or your money's just gone, and it's just gone for these folks. So, you know, we've gone a long time on this topic because it gets us fired up. But what would you say to watch out for in this type of incident?
This is the scariest of the three that I'm talking about, because we don't have, most of our clients don't come out and see a property before close. You know, we provide halfway pics, halfway video. We have finished pics and finished video where we actually have our construction supervisor walking through the house and showing you the rehabs that have been done. We've had them inspected twice. So I guess that's those things that I mentioned there, you know, prior to close. If you're an investor from out of area, you know, we have those safety guards in place so you could see that. But, you know, the thing is that is so troubling to me is, like, I can see how easy this can be, that this could be pulled off again.
Oh, as easy as could be.
I think, you know, how easy it could be, and how, you know, customers sometimes are too trusting how it could happen. So, like, to avoid it, I mean, you know, it kind of goes back to reputation again. You know, if you find a turnkey company that's been doing it for 8, 9, 15 years, you know, the likelihood is pretty strong that they're a legit company, and you know, these people have not been doing it for any time.
Right.
You know, so it goes back to experience and reputation again. But then, you know, making sure those safety guards, like I've mentioned, you know, that we have in place with the pictures, the videos, the inspections, all of those things, you know, we offer to our
Don't close
customers.
Until it's done. Make sure you get title insurance. Get an appraisal. If you're not using, you're going to get an appraisal if you're using a mortgage. If you're not using a mortgage, order an appraisal. You know, we provide third-party inspections, like Clint said, and provide those to our clients. We always say that you're welcome to get your own too. It never hurts. So you can do. Those are the ways you can mitigate the risk in doing this from afar. Mm-hmm. But you know, even though there's all those steps you can do to protect yourself, I still think the number one way to protect yourself is to work with an experienced group that has a good reputation, that's been around for a long time.
You know, I was really, to kind of wrap this up, you know, I was very fascinated by the whole Bernie Madoff, you know, scandal. And I know a lot about it because I've watched everything about it. And just how that scumbag was able to pull this off without ever making a single trade, where he would have had to have traded more options than there were available on the market at that, you know, time. It was just crazy. But anyhow, the reason why I get so fired up, and I can relate it back to like the Madoff, you know, scandal, that Henry Markopoulos is the person that was the whistleblower for Bernie Madoff. And he was a statistician, but he was also worked
I love that guy.
at an investment bank. And, he said some stats like, for Bernie Madoff to do what he did, it's like the equivalent of a Major League Baseball player hitting 900 for their career, something like that. Not quite that, but I mean, he actually had the stats.
Right.
But, the interviewer, asked him, and this was on 60 Minutes, was it making you mad? Did you dislike him? I'm like, well, he said, absolutely. When someone is playing in the same sandbox as you and is doing it dirty, yeah, it pisses you off.
Right.
And these three situations that we've talked about, they have interrupted our, ethical, moral company that we've had to, it's taken time away from us. And it pisses me off. Right. It really pisses me off. These clowns that act like, and I'm not saying new people can't get into real estate. We were new people once.
Right.
We grew slowly. We did it the right way. I'm not saying that people can't enter into real estate, but, there's a certain, moral code that, that I think that people have to enter into this. And when people coming in, with such dirty hands like this and playing on the field that we've been playing in for as long as we have and causing me a hard time.
Hate them.
Yeah, I want to put my foot in their ass.
Right.
It's hard. It's every single one of them. It's just. And
I get frustrated too with everyone out there. Listen, if you go chasing returns and getting greedy and help support these kinds of people, some of it's on you. So don't do that. Don't go chase these returns. Greed is the only thing that allows these people to succeed. If you can just stick with a group that offers good service, good properties, and good normal returns, you're going to be great. You go chasing these high returns and these clowns, you're feeding into these problems.
And it's not going to end well. It never does. Well, that's our show for today. Maybe not the most fun topic, but a real topic. I think everyone knows this world is crazy, and you got to be watching out for people, at every turn of life these days. And it's the same way in real estate. Lots of clowns, lots of thieves, lots of crooks. Be careful. Do your research. I think I'm going to have to go find a punching bag to release some of my stress or something. But as always, we enjoyed talking with you today. Hit subscribe and turn that notification on. We want you to keep listening to us as we provide this free content. Till next time, happy investing.